Okay, now moving on. We've worked up to full spectrum color with the demo. And I think I liked to dial in the right option. I think I liked it right around here. Yeah, that kind of mix. So now, what else can I do if I want to just make as much of this digital coloring sandwich as possible? The next effects we can add go on top of the black line art. So to remind you, we have these slides, the exhaustive explanation of digital coloring that we've been referring to so much. Once we move beyond full spectrum color examples, like these, we get to the special effects, something called color holds. Color holds are anything that go on top of or replace the black line art. What is the color hold here? What was black line art that in the finished digital coloring is no longer black line art? The lasso. So Wonder Woman has this golden lasso, right? So this is good for special effects, highlights, sparkles, flames, offsets on darker backgrounds. So let's see this Wonder Woman. Here we have the flat color with an outline. Here we have soft edge duotone color with all underneath the black outline. And it looks fully finished. But if you want more effects, right, you can start to color on top of the outline. So let's look at that lasso. That lasso is just an outline filled with gray, which doesn't make sense if it's a golden lasso. So what do? They actually change the black outline on the lasso to an orange and then fill it with yellow. And that gives it an effect of glowing because it's no longer contained by a black outline, even though everything else is. Her hair is full bleed inking, right? It's just a black shape. But in order to get variations of highlight in the hair, then you add color holds. And along with a little bit of full spectrum color, you see that in the highlight on the legs, some purple highlights to go with the yellow skin tone, a little bit of purple highlight on the shoulder and on the chin. You get kind of the full 3D effect of digital coloring that's possible with these special effects. But it can be as simple as just adding a glow effect on selected line art. Other uses of color holds, you can fill in that black line art with one color, like you see here, or you could fill it in with a gradation, like you see here, or you can even invert it, like you see here, and all of that's going to have a different effect. So on my little cheat sheet here, my color hold version of my lemon turns the black outline into a green outline. And then we can also add highlights, things that go on top of the black line art. So I have that being affected by that highlight here. Let's see that in slides. So right here, let's go to really basic duotone color. Here we have Wonder Woman. This is from one of the DC animated movies and the design. And it's just duotone, hard-edged, typical cell shading, a pretty thin animated technical line art. The lasso has a black line around it, but they just do the tiniest little color holds to show highlights. They do it right there to show that the lasso is reflective and kind of catching the light. And they do it right here. And then they do a little glint on her silver headband and on her silver bracelet and on her chest piece and on her belt, right? So all that is like a soft-edged white highlight that's put on top of the black line art so that it interferes with the line art underneath. And that's what you can see with my little lemon right here. That white highlight is interfering with that outline. So how can we apply that? Well, let's say I wanted that donut frosting to look incredibly pink, right? I can take out the black outline on that point. So how do I do it? Well, first I duplicate my black line art, my vector, and then I rasterize it. I am not rasterizing my actual black line art. That is sacrosanct. That is sacred. So, but now, with this rasterized version, I am going to double click it and add a color overlay And instead of it being black, with the typical slowness of Photopea, I got to make sure I've closed my other programs. That's going to help. Sure. Yeah, desktop. Sorry, saving for the morning class. This is what's called a text blocking sketch. If Photoshop is open on your computers and you're using Photopea, make sure you close Photoshop so that you have full processing. Okay, now I'm going to play with a different color for the color overlay of the black line art. Instead of black, let's try a red. Right? And you can see it's doing it everywhere, but I'm choosing where I want it. I'm going to cut it out. So let's get a really saturated pink. Ah, that looks good. And now how do I turn that into a color hold? I am going to lasso around it. For only the shapes I want. So if I'm just doing the frosting, I just lasso around the frosting and not the cigarette and not the flies, and then duplicate that and then turn off the color hold somewhere else. What's nice about doing it as a separate layer like that is then I can go in and erase from it. So for instance, I can erase out this little hashtag, which is supposed to make the donut look dirty, and it doesn't look as dirty if it's all in pink. But that helps. I have another one here. And again, I am not touching my vector line art. This is all separate from that on new copies. And because it's on its own layer, I can also play with its opacity, right? And decide how much I want to affect that line art. And what if, instead of filling it with just a solid color, I fill it with a gradation instead? So I go light to dark, but let's, instead of black, let's choose that pink. Like a dark pink, still very saturated. And then instead of white, a light pink. Say okay, lots of okay. Set the angle. Like so. And you can see the difference. Right? So now that really looks like a pink frosting donut. Maybe too much. And then a lot of you are asking how to add that texture effect that I like in my flat color and in my coloring. I just change something I've done on top that's a little different from normal to dissolve mode, and that will give me that little broken up texture. As long as I'm doing a slight opacity shift. Now the other thing I can do is I can rasterize that now, all my color holds, by rasterizing the layer style, and that allows me to dodge and burn it. So if I burn it, just like we did with compositing with a soft-edged brush, an exposure of less than 20, do a pressure sensitive but large, right? then I'm able to darken the line art in some places. Come on, keep up with me. And lighten it in others with dodge and burn. To save my work because it's starting to lag a little on me. Now this is just on the line art. So because it's on top of our sandwich, this is like a special effect of having an olive in a toothpick. But you can see I can darken the lines in some places. This is using the burn tool. And I can dodge and brighten them in others. But remember to set your settings. Soft edged. Exposure of less than 20. These are really strong tools. And I just do it on midtones to begin with. So the highlight I can make a lot brighter. And you can go back and forth and decide where the line should be brighter, where they should be darker. Okay, so that's just changing the lines. And obviously you can do that anywhere you want. I think doing it on the frosting alone can be effective. But maybe I don't want it like full opacity. So maybe I want it just slight like that. I think that works. Does it help? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Sometimes special effects go kind of too far. Depends on your content, what you're after. Okay, the next thing is, how about a color hold that goes beyond the line art, affects things around it and outside of it? So, like this check mark, if I want to make, it's the V for voted, so I don't want to mess with it too much. But if I wanted to make it just feel really, really special, I could add something on top and draw, this is just very common, a little highlight glint on the star. And then I could fill that. I could use the, I'll use the paint bucket, and I'll fill it with kind of a yellowish color. Usually I would just do a white glint, but I'll do kind of a cream color. And then fill it, right? So now, we're going to use a filter that we used for soft edge duotone, because I don't want to just leave it as hard edged and breaking up that line art that way. But notice how this is on top. It's like a sesame seed on top of the bread. So I'm going to go to filter, and I'm going to go to blur, and then get it to be that different color. And some style illustrations do this a lot. Every local color will have a different outline color hold. Oh, look, it even kept all this. So this star, if I want to soften those edges, I go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. The only filter I need you to know, that will be on the final exam, is Gaussian Blur, because that allows you to take focus away and to soften edges intentionally. It's always better, like with duotone coloring, to start with hard edge and then soften from there. So once I open up Gaussian Blur, it will give me my options, and then I decide how many pixels to blur it. And you can see how the edge changes, and it starts to get just into a smudge, right? So I want it to affect, I'm going to do it maybe about 20. Yeah, there we go. Affect the line art, but you can still kind of see the line art coming through. Whoops, what did I just do? I painted within it. Okay, so then I'm going to move it to where I think the glint should be. And then I can play with the opacity, right? But the difference is, if I look on